Hello and welcome to Mental Health. It's a Trap. We're your hosts, Susan and Stephen, mother and son, unraveling the complexities of the mental health traps people fall in. Join us on this podcast journey as we demystify the mental health labyrinth, explore common issues, and provide you with tools to navigate this sometimes extremely daunting terrain. You can expect engaging conversations, personal stories, and probably also have a laugh or two. Access to mental health care should not be what causes you additional stress. We invite you to follow along, and together we can embrace the darkness.
All right, you awesome human, you listening. Let us jump right back in to finish this conversation with Luci, myself, and my mom.
Some people may not have the tools to manage some of the experiences that they've had in their life. And, you know, it's a worldwide problem. It's big. We know that. So I think another part of it is, how do we provide better care, quality care, versus this, drive-through care. I joke with my providers and stuff. I go, listen, the way we go in this medical world, people are going to be sticking their heads out the window at a drive-through and get their brain surgery done, and then they'll do next. That's the feel of it, because it's like the next patient. Even for myself, like, okay, so you have to schedule this many patients a day, and you have to do this many outreaches, and so it's like all of these things that really are at some levels disheartening to me as a professional. And then I say, okay, I will do my job. I will meet your requirements, and I'm still going to do what's right by the people that I serve. Not by the people that I work for, but the people that I serve. And I stay in that mentality because it really helps me to help people, I think, more effectively than the other way.
Yeah. What I've really had to wrap my mind around in the last couple of years is that I need to do the best that I can do. And there are going to be days where that best is really great. And there are going to be days where it is not as good as I want it to be, but it's the best I can do that day. And to remind myself to be gentle with myself, because I see lots of traumatic things at work. We had a really bad code a few weeks ago that lasted a really long time and took a lot of staff off the floor to deal with. And after that, after doing chest compressions, I had to walk out and go see another patient to discharge them home because they were doing good and got to go home. And just reminding myself that if I need a minute, I can take it.
Absolutely. And I think that's the side for those of us who in the medical profession. I work in it now, so I see a little bit more, not on that level because I'm in primary care. So if I was in oncology, I might see different things. So if I was in an emergency room, I would see different things. I don't think that we understand what it's like behind the scenes of what providers and nurses and MAs and all of the other staff, what they're kind of having to go through and having to switch that quickly from a trauma, and that is a trauma, and no one's going to tell me differently, to discharge a patient who's happy to go home. Wow.
Yeah, and it's hard to it's also hard to come home after a day like that and tell my partner well, what did you do at work today? And or explain to my friends that what's crazy too is that somebody dying is not usually the worst part of my day. Like, that's just another, it's another day. It's sad, and I can be appropriate and respectful, but it's also, I feel like between personally and professionally, I've been around a lot of death. So it's like somebody dying is also like not the worst thing. Like, that's not the hardest part of my job. You know,
Right.
sometimes it's dealing with the living, you know, or like having a personality conflict. Because I know just like that, you know, not every provider is the provider for me. I am not the provider for everybody either.
Exactly. And that's a hard thing for us to swallow, right? So I've been fired from clients over the years, and I go, thank you. Thank you for taking care of you. Let's find you someone you can work with. And my hope is that all providers can do that, because, you know, we all have our own personalities and our ways in how we interact with others. And there are some people that may only be able to interact with a certain population of personalities, and others may have a wider range that they can, you know. So I think that that scale changes for each person. And just saying to yourself, it's okay, because it's not about me, it's about the relationship that's just not a good fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I mean, I had a experience recently where I asked to not have a patient back a second day, simply because I felt like I wasn't going to be the one to give them the best care of it. Somebody else was going to be a better fit for them. And that, and I think that that does two things. That for the patient, it makes sure that the patient gets their needs met, and that they get the best care possible and available to them. And then it does something for me as a staff member, where it also like helps me, you know, keep my cup full or not empty it as fast, so then I can continue to provide good quality care to my other patients.
Right.
You know, but I have to make that request kind of from this like humble place, and you know, just say, I don't think this is I'm not the right nurse for this patient. Can you assign them to somebody else tomorrow?
Good for you. I'm glad you can do that.
Well, thanks. I know we definitely have patients that we call them kind of one and done, where for whatever reason they're just really either physically or mentally draining, and so we kind of switch nurses a lot. And then there's some patients that, you know, we just don't click, and that's okay. You know, and I always tell my patients too that you know, we give them this patient bill of rights when they first get admitted or come to the health system. And I think people just kind of glance over it really quickly because we get so much paperwork, you know, but I remind them that, you know, you have the right to refuse things, and you have the right to request a different provider and to request a second opinion. And, you know, if you feel like you still have questions when I'm done explaining something, like, let me know and we can come up with a different way to explain it. And, like, you know, like I said at the beginning of the episode, it's like I have to do so much teaching to people on just how to be patients, because it's not something we're taught.
Oh, the joys of medical care and not knowing stuff, and us being left with having to know everything. And like you said about deductibles and your max, and like no one, like, it's like, what is, like, huh? Because out of network, even that, like, oh, even like, so just to kind of tie in Psychology Today, sometimes people put on their profiles that they accept an insurance and they're no longer paneled with that insurance, or they're just out of network and they pretend, in my opinion, and say that they're with, you know, Kaiser or Blue Cross or whatever. And then they're like, oh no, we do out of network benefits. And then if someone doesn't know that, then they get screwed over, because then they have to pay the bill. And it's like, how do you navigate that when insurance is supposed to be, you know, beneficial, but it ends up being more harmful because it's like you have to read this, 100-page book on
Mm-hmm.
explanation of benefits. Or I have a friend who worked at one of the clinics and hospitals here and did all of that and is planning on, creating videos on all of that so that people can better understand what the EOB is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how to access your benefits and how to advocate for yourself. So, as we kind of mentioned, insurance kind of becomes a stickler in things and also just the habits because, it's 2024. It's not like these issues have not been talked about. And it, some ways, comes down to the leadership. Like, so what are the hospitals and the medical systems and the clinics doing to ensure that these things don't happen, right? Or when they do happen, how do they respond to it versus, oh, it's your responsibility, Lucy. Like, oh, you had a patient die. Oh, you spent an hour, doing CPR. Yeah, who cares? Like, and it's like, no, like you, as admin and higher ups, they should care because if you burn out and people burn out, and that's the
Mm-hmm.
point of burnout is because you're expected to work in, traumatic situations and then to have to take care of yourself. Like it's all on you. And it's like, what is the hospitals and the medical system's role and giving you access to not just therapy, but the different modalities and different healing things that you can do so that you're not just stuck in that consistent traumatic state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of employers really rely on like the EAP, the Employee Assistance Package or benefits, um, which I have kind of a love-hate relationship with because I feel like for the longest time, like I had a rough transition to my current position, and my boss kept telling me, well, use EAP. And it's like, no, dude, I have my own therapist. Like, I don't want a second one. Um, and like, this is not necessarily an acute issue. Like, these are, like, I'm dealing with ongoing things. And so I feel like so many employers, they kind of just hide behind this EAP model that, oh, well, we care about mental health because we have EAP or we have a hotline, and it's in the bathroom, so it's okay because there's a hotline. So, but like, or what they don't tell you is, oh, well, it only pays for so many sessions, or you can't pick your provider, you're stuck with whoever they send you to, and you can only do it only will cover so many sessions, or or may only cover a certain type of therapy, and really, like, maybe you don't jive with CBT and you want some EMDR. And yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I have a love-hate relationship. I think for some people it can be really great. I definitely know people who have really benefited through employee assistance programs before. And then the other thing that like makes it complicated is I'm in Kansas City, so I live on, like, my city is on the border between Kansas and Missouri, and people are interchanged between the two states every day, and the rules between the states are very different. In terms of like mid-level providers, like nurse practitioners, and cannabis is legal recreationally in Missouri, but not in Kansas, and you like the separate state Medicaid programs don't work with it in the border state, and like, you want to talk about barriers to care. It's crazy because, like, I can literally cross the street and be in a different state, and we have different rules.
Yep. EAP is definitely, for me, one of those band-aids. It's like you get 3 sessions. Like it might take you 3 sessions to get to know the therapist or the provider to build a relationship, but it's like, oh, okay. And then you have to pay, or there might be fees to access lot more long-term care services. And again, like what other things could they provide that are outside the box? Like, not everyone wants to talk. Like, what other services and programs could they access? Which, I don't know if EAP offers things, like anger management or like, the break rooms, the rage rooms, or,
Yeah.
being creative, because it's like people have emotions and feelings. How can you help them physically and not just in the thought space?
Mhm. Well, and I think I like how you touch on like there's so many options out there, and I I'm constantly amazed at like all the different treatment modalities that are available, and um and it's like if somebody's not the right fit, I can get a different provider and I can get a different modality, and I'm amazed that like I was in and out of therapy like most of my life, probably 2/3 of my life, and I was in my 30s when I learned how to do box breathing as a skill. Like I had been to probably a dozen therapists and provide like psychiatric providers, starting as a kid, and like never learned this like really basic skill of box breathing. And now I get really excited to teach it and demonstrate it for people. And I've got one of the little stickers in my purse that you can like trace your thumb with to remind me to do it.
Yep.
I've never heard of that.
You've never heard of box breathing?
No.
So it's what I liked about learning it was that like I'd always been told, well, just do some deep breathing, and it's like that felt very abstract to me, because it's like, okay, I'm already breathing. Like what makes that different? And I had a former boyfriend actually teach me box breathing during a panic attack, and it was just a matter of taking a breath in over a period of like 4 seconds and holding it for 4 seconds and breathing out over 4 seconds and then waiting another 4 before you take your next breath in. And so you're kind of tracing this box, or some people will do triangle breathing. Okay. And so you're like counting, and like kind of holding your breath for a certain period of time.
Now that I've heard of as you described it, I've just never heard it being referred to as boxed breathing.
Yeah. Well, see, and I had never, like, I'd always just been told, well, do deep breathing. Okay. I'm breathing deeply. I was a singer. Like, I have great lung capacity. What else do you want me to do? I'm still upset.
And I think that's exactly what my mom said before, is like, you sometimes providers give you something to do, and then you're like, but how do I do it? And I think that's oftentimes the thing that's missing, is if you don't practice the skill with the person, the patient or client, then when they go home, why would they want to practice or do breathing? Because it's like, you're like, oh, just, go relax, go do like a guided meditation. And it's like, for what? Like, what investment do I have in doing that when you're just, and again, we talk about advice, like when they give you advice, you're less likely to take it because you're like, yeah, okay, sure, right? Like, go eat better, go sleep, go drink more water, go exercise, like the generic things that, we all know we should do because it's good and healthy for us. But then we get stuck in our habits of, being busy or having other things that take, precedent over our own self-care, even though we know how important it is to take care of ourselves.
Yeah, because you can't pour from an empty cup. I took a resiliency course last year through my employer, actually, and like the one big takeaway I got from it was that it didn't matter how much I was doing or what I was doing at home to like refill my cup at the end of the day or on my days off, if I was coming to work and letting everybody poke holes in it all day. And I wasn't doing anything to try to patch those holes or refill my cup while I was at work.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll explore the CRS model with you.
Yeah.
Use the...
And so then I learned, like, oh, hey, I need to make sure it's noon. I haven't taken a bathroom break. I'm going to take 5 minutes and take a bathroom break. And try to listen to, like, what my physical body needs, too. Because I'm very guilty of just go, and pushing through just to the next thing or dealing with, like, the next crisis.
Well, that's almost a nurse thing, right? Like, it's like you don't have time to go to the bathroom. So you're holding it until your shift ends, even if it's a 12-hour shift.
Oh, and let me tell you, that has absolutely happened where I've gotten to the end of my shift and just been like, I don't think I went to the bathroom a single time today. But like, I have ADHD, and so I know that, like, I am not always in tune with, like, my physical, like, sensory input. It's really easy for me to tune out and get distracted and, like, hyper focused almost on, okay, well, I'm taking care of patients. Oh, okay, that sensation means I need to go to the bathroom.
Well, I think...
Or no, actually, you're thirsty. You need to stop and take water.
Right. And I think that's the trap, right? Like, in part, it's the systems that don't allow us to take breaks because there's not enough staff and you have to cover 10, 15, how many other patients you have, and you have all this work to do. And it speaks to, again, if you go back to our psychosomatic or our mind-body connection, is as humans, our bodies are able to ignore what it's saying to us. Like, you have to go to the bathroom. We all, know generally the feeling of, oh, I have to go use the restroom. And in a work situation, you can get used to ignoring those signals and not having to go. And it gets to a point where you haven't been to the bathroom in a while, even if you had a lot of liquids, but that sensation is kind of like cut off. Like, you don't have that urge to use the bathroom because you're focused on other things. And so you do your job. And then sometimes even at the end of the day, maybe you don't feel like you have to go to the bathroom. And maybe you have that urge of like, oh, I really have to go now.
Yeah. So I feel like one of the things I've done for myself is kind of go back to basics. So and especially when, like, I'm having a bad day, is I'll kind of go back to basics, and it's like, okay, do I need to eat something? Do I need to drink something? Are my physiological needs met? Am I too cold? Am I too hot? Am I tired? Do I need to take a nap? I like that HALT acronym: hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Like, am I one of those things? And what can I do to fix it? And then, like, so then when I find myself, like, in a bad mood, usually I can trace it back to, like, a physiological thing. Like, oh, okay, well, no wonder why I'm cranky. I haven't eaten lunch yet. And then it's like, once I meet my physical needs, like, okay, like, I can pull out, like, some of my other tools from my tool belt, like doing my box breathing, or using distraction or phoning a friend or, doing some of the other stuff that they tell us to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's important, is remembering that we have things we can do versus getting stuck in that feeling of being overwhelmed or being stressed, or even just the being tired or not having energy. Because sometimes, like, if we talk a little bit about like DBT and doing like the opposite of, so instead of going home and crashing or going home and watching Netflix, because you can zone out, like going for that walk even though you don't want to, or doing something, whether it's exercise or something that's active, even though you feel like you want to just lay down and sleep all day after your shift.
Yeah, I keep seeing all these TikToks about like the dopamine menus of things you can do to like make yourself feel good, and so I think that might be something I do. So it's like after I've met like my physiological like immediate needs, then it's like, okay, let me order something off of my dopamine menu.
Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we have to be creative, because it is like, it's boring. Like, who wants to, like, when you go to the doctor again, make sure that you eat, exercise, sleep better, blah, 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 blah. How can we change the message so it's the same, but it's different, so it's creative and people are more interested in or excited about it, right? Well, it was great having you on, and we veered off into a completely different topic. So we will definitely have Luci come back on, because we think it's very important to hear the voice and the story of early sibling loss, or maybe you were born after your sibling, which is a different experience. And so we think that voice is important because it is often not talked about and is a different experience that when we hear more about it, hopefully it connects with people who have that experience. I think that's one of the focuses of the podcast, is to share experiences, to connect people, to know that they're not alone, which often we do feel that way, even if we know other people are in similar experiences. So any last words, Mom or Luci?
I mean, I don't have any, and we would definitely love to have you back. Yes, went down a different path, and that's the beauty of this. We go where it's meant to be for that day, and we would love to have you back to really kind of talk about, what that grief experience is like, depending on the age of where you are at the loss of your sibling.
All right, yeah, Stephen will attest. I love to talk, so I would love to come back. Maybe I'll have my dopamine menu made.
Well, I think that's good too, because then it gives people another way to think about, self-care, because self-care is another word that gets thrown out, that we hear it all the time, and it's like almost useless, because it's like we hear it so much that it's just, my thing too, when I worked in crisis and suicide intervention, was that even at the libraries, they have so many signs of the rules and people don't follow them. And then they get mad when a librarian or someone comes up to them and says, you're a little loud, or you're not supposed to be eating in this area. No one told me, or like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, there's like 5 signs over there and blah, 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 blah. So I think any way that we can introduce different ways to reframe, self-care is great. And then we would also love to hear more about Doug and Tony, and then just your experience overall in grief and loss as an infant, and how that impacted your, experience growing up, as well as the grief and loss later in life. So thank you for being here, and for our listeners, thank you for listening, and take care.
Bye.